Good morning, good morning, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Monday, June 17th, 2024. We are officially into the back half of June 2024, already into the back half of 2024, as wild as that is to say, well through the month of June. And let's just put it this way, we were off to a bit of a trudgy start. But the tropical Atlantic has definitely given us things to talk about, things to digest, and things to examine, to say the least. And I will openly begin this live stream by telling you guys, last night when I went to bed, I was looking at the models, like I always do, looking at our 18 Zulu, 0 Zulu model runs, and I really didn't look too heavily at them. I know we have our Bay of Campeche system out there. We have that weak area of disturbed activity off the southeast coast that's going to be making a run towards northern Florida, Georgia, maybe the Carolinas, which is very bizarre. We got to look at the steering on that because I really don't think that's what's going to happen. Not too sure why some of our ensembles are thinking it'll dig more towards the northeast. Doesn't make sense with our upper level pattern. But on top of that, I will admit, after setting up, there's actually a lot more we need to talk about than I initially anticipated. I thought this was going to be a very low-key live stream. Yeah, Bay of Campeche, yeah, system out there in the southeast, and boom, we're done. But there's actually a number of things I want to highlight for you guys. Nothing set in stone, as I've mentioned to a few of my compatriots over on the X, the Twitter sphere, but there are a number of little things out there that seem to try to wake up before we round out the month of June, and we're going to talk all about that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you very much for joining me on this lovely Monday morning. I hope you had a wonderful Father's Day weekend. I hope for all of our fathers out there, we enjoyed the holiday festivities, took full advantage of it, and spent time with your families, and especially your kids. That's what makes you a father in the first place. Good morning, Mick and Marley, Richard Perez, Nomad Avenue 6. Who else we got in the chat this morning? Soulful Sawyer, good morning. Thanks for joining us all the way from Seattle. Great to see you. Let's see, Brooke Ward, James Keene, Clayton Keeney, T.G. Herman, good to see you, Kaez. Good morning, Naz. Morning, everyone watching this while I finish getting ready for work. I love it. Kevin Rivera, thank you very much for joining us. So, Kevin, glad you're in the chat this morning, buddy, because believe it or not, Puerto Rico is on my area of not necessarily investigation, but just an area of note. Kind of like, pulling out the old man spectacle and taking a look out there, and I'll show you exactly why. Twilight Firefly 100, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. So let's get into it as more folks begin to join us. Samuel Wilkinson Jr., thank you very much for tuning in. Alfalfa Bill Enjoyer, having pets does not make you a father. I think so. I think it makes you a father. I definitely consider myself a furry father at the end of the day. I have Willow and Miko behind me here, so let's go ahead and get started. Dane Clement, Derek, good morning. Deep South Texas, thank you very much for tuning in. I'm hoping we get a few people in from Texas. We got to talk Texas. Let's rock and roll, shall we? So we are officially in the red zone here with this puppy. It looks like at this point in time, we're ready to go, guys. It looks like Tropical Storm Alberto is on the immediate horizon within the next couple of days, maybe within the next 24 hours, we probably will have our first tropical storm of the season. It does look like that area of interest is going to cooperate. It has received a designation. We are officially looking at AL91. I know I butchered that on a couple of TikTok updates ago, and I believe on a live stream here, I was calling that first system AL91. Now we can officially say AL91 is down there in the Bay of Campeche. A broad area low pressure is beginning to form up. I have the satellite imagery and windy, our streamlines, to show you guys exactly what we're looking at. And then this has yet to receive a designation. This could very well potentially be AL92. And the reason that is we have the convection, we have the thunderstorm activity over there over open water, and there is a surface low present. We are looking at possibly having a recon mission into this area of disturbed weather very soon. As you can see in the description here, an area of cloudiness and thunderstorms located several hundred miles east of the Bahamas is associated with a surface trough and an upper level area of low pressure that is beginning to stack down to the surface. So 10% chance of formation in the 48-hour window, 30% chance over the next 7 days. We are neck and neck here in terms of AL91. 48 hours, 70% chance, 7 days, 70% chance. I would imagine as we go through the day today, especially once we have the recon mission go in there. See the bottom sentence there, guys. An Air Force Reserve Hunter aircraft is scheduled to investigate the system later today. Homies out there in the Air Force are doing their thing. That is the Air Force Reserves. I'm the Naval Reserves, but, maybe one day we can do like a little maybe meet and greet. Who knows? I might be able to fly a reconnaissance mission. You never know. I was thinking about that yesterday. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Formation chances are a 70-70 split. Let's get into it, shall we? So as Alfalfa Bill Enjoyer had mentioned, we have our 91 invest here on Tropical Tidbits. This literally just released. You can see at 12 Zulu Universal Time, which was maybe an hour ago, this just released. 30 knot winds in the center of circulation, already down to 1,004 millibar low. Now, naturally, take this with just a little bit of a grain of salt. These statistics are going to be a little, I guess you could say, inflated almost, or just a little bit, like generalized, because we haven't gotten our radio sons in there, our drop sons. We are not flying through this system just yet. Area low pressure down there, right off the Yucatan coastline, the Bay of Campeche. Mr. Max, shout out to you, sir, if you're watching from down there. We have our invest area that's dumping a lot of rainfall for you guys and is expected to develop and slowly trudge off towards the northwest. General takeaway here is it'll spend about a day or two over open water before crashing and burning into eastern Mexico, running ashore over the terrain features out there. Some of the guidance still wants to take it towards the north. We'll take a look at that here in a moment. If you pop back over here and look at our intensity guidance, we are looking at pretty steady agreement. We will make tropical storm status. I'm not too sure why. There are still some sources out there, unofficial sources, mentioning hurricane potential. That is not going to happen. Not going to happen. I am 100% confident this is not going to become a hurricane. Way too broad. Way too expansive, too short of a duration over open water. We do have the favorable upper-level ingredients. Obviously, we're still in a favorable MJO phase. We have a lot of rising air out there. Wind shear is trying to back off ever so slightly. It is still in effect, but to the north of the system. So the further south it stays, the more we can see that vorticity more or less bottle up a little bit and try to take on that tropical storm characteristic. I really do not think, at the end of the day, this is going to become a hurricane, because it's just not, if you look at it from a physics standpoint, it's really not going to take on that form of a rapidly and tightly consolidated, just spinning top like a Beyblade. It's not going to do that. It's not going to have a chance to spin up that intensely to where we will develop a hurricane. And you can see low to mid-grade tropical storm is the general thinking right in through here, trying to top out at about maybe a 45 to 48 knot tropical storm, with the lowest, or what's the word I'm looking for, the floor of this, the base being somewhere just above tropical storm intensity before rapidly diminishing as it moves further inland or it gets closer to that land interaction. We already looked at that. Here's the satellite image overall. So we'll start off here just so we can get a general idea of what it is that we're looking at. And there's a lot more to this satellite image than leads to be, I guess you could say, than kind of like a transformer shout out, more than meets the eye. So obviously dead center of the satellite image more of all are our two invest areas. Believe it or not, I didn't show you guys this because obviously they're going to converge and move up towards the northwest. But if you come back to Tropical Tidbits and take a look, we do actually have 90E out there. There's two separate areas of low pressure. This one's moving inland and preparing to cross over right now. I didn't really want to brief this, but it is worth mentioning that, believe it or not, National Hurricane Center has actually designated two areas of investigation out there. We have an E90L, or 90E, excuse me, and then we have 91L on the tropical Atlantic side. Looking at the guidance here, same general thinking. Most of it kind of curves it back towards the immediate west, stays over open water for a day or two before crashing right through Mexico and emerging somewhere maybe to the south of the Baja Peninsula. Not expected to reform after that, but still worth investigating. It's some tropical energy out there that could wander its way across the Bay of Campeche and move inland. Definitely going to bring our rain chances up for Mexico and southern Texas. We're looking at a very high-end flood risk, between 10 to 12 inches of rainfall with this puppy before it finally works its way through. And let's go back to the satellite image. As you can see, just a very large area of broad circulation. I guess I can understand why we've designated two invest areas, I guess. There's an area of vorticity down here and our next area of vorticity up there, and they're going to wrap around and just kind of converge into one gigantic piece of energy, and that's what's going to help to migrate up towards East Mexico or southernmost Texas. The border of Texas looks to receive a lot of impacts. Secondary system right in through here, the tail end of our trough/frontal system. You can see the front draped right in through here. Very easy to spot. You can see our trough axes, our ridge building in over eastern Conus, and our trough still moving its way slowly but surely into the North Atlantic. That is what could possibly be AL92. We do have a surface low pressure right in through here that's beginning to show itself, at least on the streamlines. We can take a look at that here in a moment. Then we still have our tropical waves moving through, and I do actually want us to start start paying a bit more attention to the MDR, and I'll show you guys here in a little bit. So like I said, it's a bit of a conglomeration. There's a lot to talk about. Not anything official, nothing concrete, but just a few things that naturally here in the Weather Center that I'm going to keep my eye on because we are into hurricane season and we're only going deeper into the hurricane season. So MDR, some signals there that we do need to pay close attention to this. This is our one area of investigation, our second area of investigation, and believe it or not, on the European model particularly, I'm noticing a bit of a trend that there is something else we might want to pay attention to down here that has the potential of affecting from Louisiana to actually the Big Bend of Florida. Believe it or not, I didn't see it coming, and I'm not making that up. I'm not hyping it or anything like that for my haters out there. I'm just saying, like I said, I woke up, took a look at the models, checked that invest off the southeast, and was kind of meh. Didn't really think we'd have a whole lot to talk about, but actually there is, believe it or not. So let's continue to move the train along, shall we? So looking at windy, here are our separate little invest areas. So there's one area of low pressure there, one area of low pressure just to the immediate west, maybe 25 to 50 miles west of Guatemala City that's moving inland. There's that little that surface low pressure, small, tiny little pinwheel of surface low pressure out there that is already present. So that's why I'm thinking maybe we will end up having an invest out of that. Might not be anything too extravagant, nothing really worthwhile to write home about. Lord willing, it will elevate our rain chances for northern Florida and Georgia, get some rain in here, even if it is just a couple of inches to help bolster our numbers a little bit. And yeah, so this general area, this large pocket of gyre activity is just going to rock and roll up in this general direction. This here is expected to move off towards the west and west-northwest. Like I said, if I zoom this image out just a little bit, let me get my cursor back, zoom it out just a little bit, and we go up aloft just a hair. Let's go to 850 millibars. Actually, wow, look at that. Got distracted again, but look at that nice tropical wave right there. Nice little cyclonic spin to the north of our ITCZ. There's a wave right there. You can see it, a little wave right back in through here. Let's see if we spot another one real fast. Doesn't look like there's anything. It looks like maybe a little weak wave right in through here, perhaps. You can see a little bit of confluence and cyclonic pivoting in the winds there. But anyways, if I zoom back out and we go up to, say, the mid-levels, we'll go up to 850 millibars and take a look at our steering pattern. This is why I'm a little astonished that the models are suddenly taking this, whatever this decides to be, and moving it up towards the Carolinas. That, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, obviously, people are going to vouch for the Bureau. People are going to vouch for the European model far more than they're going to vouch for me. Let me adjust the camera. I got that sun glint in there again. There we go. People are going to vouch for the computer models more than they're going to vouch for somebody like me just kind of doing this out of my home office. But, I mean, looking at the steering here, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It really doesn't. We have our giant ridge, mid-amplitude ridge that's just sitting right over top the southeast and the mid-Atlantic region. Here's what's left of our trough and our frontal system down there. And actually, if you look, guys, very impressive. Again, I don't know why the models are doing what they're doing. Maybe because it's so small, but look at that. Nice little consolidated cluster of winds, and this is even at 850 millibars. Wonderful symmetry right there, kind of closed up. There's our little center of circulation, very small, like a little pinhole. So it's there. It's something to look at. I don't know. Like I said, remains to be seen. We'll continue to keep an eye on it. Our models are not really feeling it. They're not vibing too well with it right now. But anyways, the key takeaway here is if you look at our 850 millibar flow, gigantic anticyclone here. We have our gyre down here that's also helping to create that massive mid-level wind tunnel right through there between the Yucatan Channel. Cayman Islands are probably seeing some increased winds. The Yucatan Peninsula is seeing some increased winds. Surface winds, that is. So this puppy right there, I'll change the ink so I can draw it. As this system becomes a lot more dominant over the north and northeast United States, it's going to want to track like this. You know, I can see something right in between here. Maybe a northernmost jog towards the state of Georgia. But I'm not too sure why our ensembles are suddenly doing this. That would indicate that our ridge is going to break down, and all this excitement that I'm seeing on social media about a death ridge building in over eastern Conus is not going to apply. So I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss on that one. We'll take a look at our long-range models and see, but there's our 850 millibar flow, our two areas very distinctly highlighted here. Here's a satellite image of Invest 91L trying to get going. Looks fairly unimpressive at the moment, but you can see that just looking at the cloud tops, there's not a lot of shear over top of it. There's not a whole lot of shear whatsoever. Otherwise, you'd be seeing all that upper level cirrus, the kind of bluish, greenish colors blowing off in this direction, like we saw last year with El Nino, or flying around in one way, shape, or form, but not a lot of shear. So it is more or less just festering down there, just festering. Here's our other area. This is kind of taken on a decent appearance as well. Not too organized, but we have a lot of nice thunderstorm activity with it right in through there. This is the base of our trough. You can kind of see it digging in and creating a lot of that cirrus blow-off towards the northeast. This would be the area that we'd want to watch if that surface low can wrap up and continue to manifest itself in the cloud signature here. We saw it in the streamlines. It's definitely there. Samuel Wilkinson, I'm going to work now, drive, travel to my farm in Meadville, Mississippi. I'm out by good, great, nice, safe today, y'all. Yeah, be safe, Samuel. Have a good one. Thank you for tuning in this morning. This could very well possibly be our next area of investigation by the National Hurricane Center. I know they have a recon mission scheduled to go in it, and who knows, even if the models aren't feeling it, we could still get a tropical depression out of it. I'm not ruling out a depression. I really do think that we should kind of just maintain our situational awareness and watch this, because it also, too, has a fairly decent upper-level environment and warm waters down below it. Lots of thunderstorm activity. That dry air isn't doing too much to impede the thunderstorm development, so we'll just be waiting and watching. We come over to our ensembles. This is just another quick glance at our ensembles for Invest 91L. You can see the GFS ensembles do kind of want to take it up towards Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi, that was a joke, guys. Corpus Christi, southern Texas, the very southernmost border of Texas, but the general thinking is a weaker system is just going to kind of wrap up and arc around into immediate eastern New Mexico and then die off as it moves over the very high terrain features. There's more or less get cheese graded from the bottom up. We look at our European ensembles here for this morning, and I'll zoom in for you guys so you can see a little bit better. Let's zoom in. That's one thing I love about weathernerds.com. We'll zoom in, and there you go. So ensemble support is being lost for our system out here, and I think maybe what's going on is the European model is having a hard time picking up on which low pressure it is that could try to show itself or unveil itself a little bit more so. This looks a little bit further to the north than what we were initially anticipating, what our models have been popping out, and then we have another area down here that looks to take on that west-northwest track towards the state of Florida and all that. This one kind of to arc out. This is the one I'm a little interested about. I'm not too sure why. Not really jiving with this too well, in my opinion. Of course, obviously, the computer models know more than I do. They can do a lot more mathematics and more physics-driven equations than I can, but this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. This would indicate to me that we're going to see our ridge break down. An area of weakness in the ridge is going to make itself known, or a trough or a frontal system is going to come through and grab this, but that remains to be seen. We will continue to see. And then down here in the Gulf of Mexico, this is what I was talking about. So if you look, this, and it's hard to delineate because it's crazy. It's just a bunch of spaghetti thrown all over the image here. But if you look right here, this is AL91. What I want to raise your guys' attention to is the sudden uptick in this. This is a different system. That's not the same system, and the European ensembles are actually taking a bona high-end tropical storm and driving it up towards New Orleans, Apalachicola, Panama City, Florida even. Look at these members at 990 millibars, or back up towards the Beaumont, Texas area towards Shreveport in northwest Louisiana. So a nice little ensemble spread, but our models they're definitely thinking something's out there still, and we want to keep continuing to watch. This is the first one. I'll go ahead and use a different color coding so you guys can identify it along with me. Then here is our second area of interest that we're watching, and then I'll use the yellow shading. Or actually, I'll use a different color so we can see it a little bit better. We'll use white. White should stand out pretty well on this. And then here's our next one. So we have three different individual areas that we want to watch. Confidence is definitely very good for AL91. This is still very wishy-washy. Our models are suddenly getting very finicky with it. I'm not too sure if it's because it's so compact, so weird. It's very microscopic. It's maybe like a fraction of the size of the state of Florida, to put it into perspective. And then we have this anomalous area of potential development that's still on the horizon that we'll have to watch for as we get closer to, as you can see in the timestamps here, the back end of June. If we move on over to our latest European model, this is the 6Z, believe it or not. We're using the 6Z just to kind of get a better, more accurate look at this. You can see down there in the Bay of Campeche, very soon, area of low pressure getting ready to develop. very readily apparent. And that's why I'm really not against, bleh. That's why I'm really against this whole discussion of a hurricane. I'm not too sure where that's coming from. I'm not too sure where we're getting that information from, but there is nothing screaming hurricane. In fact, this thing kind of maintains its intensity before getting pushed, given that nudge into eastern Mexico. And then if you look at the operational 6 Zulu of the European model, we still have a little thing right there that's trying to come down and really wrap up and moves towards Daytona Beach or Jacksonville. So that's why I'm a little confused why the European model is thinking all of a sudden that thing's going to go up towards the Carolinas. It just doesn't make very much sense to me. We'll switch down to the United States. I can't zoom in any further than that. What about here? Can I go Gulf of Mexico? That'll work. We'll use the Gulf of Mexico and take a look at this. We'll bring up our whoops. Where did our parameters go? There we go. We'll look at our 10-meter winds so we can get a bit of a better handle on where that other system is. So as the winds come through, there she goes. There goes Alberto potentially over the next 24 to 48 hours. And then if you look down there off the state of Florida at the very tail end of the run right there, something kind of moving across. Something very weak moving across the state of Florida, increasing our winds. This looks kind of open wave-ish. It's not very, very readily apparent, unfortunately. There's a bit of there's some diffluence down there at the surface there. Not too sure what that's indicating. We come over to our 0Z European model from overnight yesterday. There goes Tropical Storm Alberto potentially, and then our open wave that just doesn't really do much for us down here in the southeast. Maybe is just nothing more than rain chances. And then take a look at this. See that? So the European model has been trending this. There's something else that the Euro is trying to bring in, like a little weak tropical storm, pointing it right up there towards the panhandle between Pensacola and Apalachicola Bay. Something sneaky in the pattern. I'll zoom back out so we can get a little bit of a lesser disgusting look of this. We'll go to Gulf of Mexico, and then we'll go mean sea level pressure and precip. We'll take you through the more refined run. There goes Tropical Storm Alberto, crashing, disappearing, and then look down there in the Caribbean, the Western Caribbean, that big area of moisture coming up, and then there, see it? Right there. Very heavily sheared apart, so this thing, very low chance, but it has been there for the last couple of model runs. If I switch back to 12Z yesterday for Father's Day, afternoon Father's Day, if the Euro cooperates, go to 210 hours, there it is. There's still something moving through the pattern. This model run had it go up towards New Orleans and then suddenly scream due east and drop lots of rainfall on Biloxi, Mobile, Alabama, the panhandle of Florida before re-emerging out off the southeast coastline. So very interesting, and it's still there at 0Z, coming up like so. If I switch over to our 850 vorticity, it becomes even easier to spot. There goes Alberto. There goes our weak system in the southeast, and then there it is, that second one right there. Very weird conglomerate of vorticity. Something tries to do something, but at this point in time, we have a few other ingredients going against us. I'll switch us over to our United States AOY, and then we'll take a look at our 500 millibar heights. There's our big old ridge, and then see that trough coming in right there? Trough coming down. That's what's going to help to pick it up, and down at the surface, you can expect our wind shear is going to definitely pick up. But even this upper-level model here, this upper-level height at 500 geopotential, we have our trough digging in like so. Look at that little bit of lowering heights down there in the Caribbean, not the Caribbean, the southern Gulf of Mexico getting pulled this way. So, definitely something to monitor. I'm not expecting anything extremely extravagant out of it. Obviously, we're still too early in the season, but there's still a little something to watch. Still a little something out there. If we come over, this is the larger view of the European model for 0Z. There goes our first little thingy off the southeast, trying to consolidate a little area low pressure right there, and then it disappears within 72 hours. And then if you look right here at this point in time, you can kind of identify our two individual Caribbean and Bay of Campeche systems. So there goes Alberto. I'm just going to start calling it Alberto. It looks like we're pretty locked in at this point almost, that within 48 hours we will have a depression or a tropical storm out there. Moves into Mexico, lots of rain for the Gulf Coast of Louisiana, south and southeastern Texas. We'll take a look at some of those rainfall totals at the back end of this brief. And then if you look at this area down here, disorganized showers and thunderstorms for Central America, very bad news for them, unfortunately. I've had a lot of folks actually recently messaging me on YouTube and on Instagram, TikTok about going down towards Cancun, Costa Maya, Playa del Carmen, and actually, I want to up my personal recommendation that if you do have a trip coming up down there, you might want to purchase some insurance and maybe move it a week or so forward, just a little bit, because even if we don't see anything tropical, it's just going to be very gloomy down there, very gloomy. But anyways, you see Alberta moving up, crashes into Mexico, lots of rain for South Texas, maybe Louisiana, and then if I keep going back and forth, kind of like a GIF, see that there's another broad area there that really forms up, gets pulled in by our trough. This is the European model again, guys. Just for my folks out there who might want to come in and throw some shade. And look at this. Maybe another potential atmospheric river setup for Florida. Looks like the northern side of Florida this time, thankfully. But still a weak area of vorticity that tries to get pulled up by our upcoming trough that's going to kick the ridge out of eastern Conus and move up towards either as far west as New Orleans or as far east maybe as the panhandle of Florida, right around Apalachicola Bay, Panama City. And then Kevin Rivera, big shout out to you if you watch. There's lots of incoming rainfall for the Lesser Antilles, for the Greater Antilles, northern South America. And you go through the tail end of the European model run. If I can have my cursor back, thank you. I got to replace this mouse. Notice that we really start to see an influx of moisture off the MDR. So lots of rain chances out there. Rain chances are definitely going up. I'll show you the full extent. We'll go full tropical Atlantic and just kind of scroll through. And if you look, European model is trying to increase the amplitude in our waves out there. Definitely a lot more of a robust ITCZ. Dominant high pressure is still showing us, if anything comes up, it's going to do this and it's going to do that. Well, maybe not that second one. Let me refine that a little. I'll draw it slower. Going to kind of do something like this. You can follow the pressure gradient here. There's our frontal system that's going to bring that next system up. High pressure out over the central Atlantic, Bermuda Azores high, and a very cut and dried pressure gradient up right in through there. There's your path of least resistance. Frontal system through there, high pressure, western extent there. So going to channel up through there. And we move into the ensembles, the probabilities, and you know what? I'm going to expand the AOI just so we can take a look. Like I said, I walked into this live stream, folks, and I really didn't think we were going to have a lot to talk about, but 96 hours, we're at 100%. We're locked in. These are our tropical depression probabilities. If you look, there's a nice dark red shade right there where my cursor is. That's 99.9%. The Euro probabilities locked in. We're getting tropical storm Alberta. We come over to our tropical storm probabilities. Tropical storm probabilities are fairly high within 72 to 96 hours. We're at that 50 percentile, but if you switch over to the depression, once again, 100% chance that we're getting something. We're getting something. 96 hours, 120 hours, we're still seeing signals here that something's lighting up over the Bahamas, trying to get pulled towards the Carolinas or Florida. Now, again, if we come back over to windy.com, I really want to say that perhaps this is a struggling of interpolation by the models here. There's got to be some sort of a resolution situation or resolution issue, because look at this, we have low pressure here. Very weak. In fact, I would almost argue that this almost looks like a neutral point in the winds, a large area, like a large lopsided call in the winds there, just a dead zone. This is 850, and we have no winds at 5,000 feet above the ground there, just a dead zone. There's our nice little compact low that I really do think is what could manifest itself. That's it. But then if you look, there's also low pressure here. There's low pressure here. There's a call in the winds right there. That could be a signal of low pressure, so lots of weirdness along that trough. And I think maybe what the Euro ensembles are picking up on is this the low or is this the low? Because if this moves in, I can definitely see that getting pulled back up towards the north. If this moves in, I can see it kind of getting pulled up like this, still being a Jacksonville, Georgia, maybe a Charleston, South Carolina issue. But, that remains to be seen. We will kind of continue to monitor. If we come over to, let me see, where am I? Oh, yeah, let's continue to go through this. 168 hours, notice two separate features, folks. You see that? There goes Alberta. We're locked in. 100% chance of tropical depression formation over the next 96 to 120 hours. But look at how our probabilities suddenly light up over Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, the Yucatan. And then right here at 144 and 168 hours, we're back up to 70%. So there's something else that we still want to pay attention to. If you're not getting rain, if you're not getting any action, if you want to talk tropics and you're kind of feeling a little bummed, like I openly was this morning, I'm gonna shoot straight transparency with you guys. I woke up and I saw that feature in the southeast, bleh, finicky, 2024 so far in a nutshell, and then we got our tropical storm for Mexico. But when I started to really investigate, there were a few other areas that I'm watching, because if you look at 192 hours, we're still up to 60% chance with our ensemble guidance driving it up like this. And it gets even more funny, because if you go to 216 hours, seeing a lot of action towards the Panhandle through the Gulf of Mexico coastline. 240 hours, 264, look at the MDR. MDR is starting to pop up a little bit, starting to wake up a little on our European model. This is the very tail end of June. It would make sense with our MJO popping off, moving like this in sort of fashion, going through its phases like so, incrementally from west to east. So, kind of interesting. Then it gets a little more exciting, because if you look at our Euro ensembles, there goes Tropical Storm Alberto, boom, into Mexico. There goes a couple of members highlighting the southeast, getting it pulled up. There goes that second feature gaining ensemble support. Look at that. In the Gulf of Mexico, stronger ensemble support, as a matter of fact. Pretty nice spread on it, too. It looks like we're spreading out like this. So not a lot of convergence, but the favorability is definitely there. I think this boils down to the timing of if we can kick our ridge out of the northeast and get that trough in, or, vice versa. If the ridge can hold on a little bit longer, it'll obviously become a little bit better organized. We won't have as much shear down there, and it'll push, once again, back towards Texas, Louisiana. You can see general thinking Texas, Louisiana, but a number of them are also pulling it back towards Florida. So whole Gulf of Mexico needs to just at least keep one eye open, like I said, the spectacle. And then if you look in the tropical Atlantic, what do you know? A couple of ensemble members with even one random European model going Cat 2 Hurricane. Very erroneous. Not something I would really write home about, not anything I would panic about or be like, whoa, wait a minute. But our ensembles are kind of whispering to us. They're giving us those puzzle pieces, giving us those very small puzzle pieces. If we go over to our cyclone locations, that'll keep the spaghetti plots on the chart. There goes Alberto, small little indication of something forming in the southeast. There goes that next guy right there coming up. Pretty decent model agreement, too. Pretty decent spread. I'm not going to lie. That's, typically when you see something like this, I'm pointing. When you when you see something like this, very low confidence. That's very low confidence. It's just more or less an area kind of, okay, yeah, something to watch, but not too exciting. When you see the ensemble plots doing something like this, especially from our European model, a hot model run at 0Z, lots of good agreement right there for a second wave. That's pretty decent. And some of our ensembles are definitely getting up there in intensity. Again, we have two ensemble members here that take it into Category 1 hurricane strength. So definitely interesting to monitor. And then there you go. We keep our ensembles out there in the MDR, and they're definitely hinting at something. This is interesting. The main reason I bring up the Lesser Antilles and the Greater Antilles and the Tropical Atlantic is not because I'm thinking we'll see development over the next several days, but more or less because of the pattern we have in place. Every time I take a look at these ensembles, it seems like they change for the Greater Atlantic. If I go all the way to the end to 12 Zulu yesterday, very small whispers. If you go to 0Z the other day, very small whispers once again, go all the way towards the back end of the run. Some ensemble members coming up. The only reason I bring that up is not to alarm anybody. You will probably see rain chances go up because as these waves come across, the European model tries to get excited and develop them. But that's neither here nor there. The key takeaway here is because of the pattern, because of the high pressure here, and potential ridging or troughing over central United States and ridging up towards the northeast, the path of least resistance, as I like to say, is going to be right through there, right through here. So that's why I bring it up. Even if we have just a nice amplified tropical wave coming through, it's worth monitoring for our islands out there because it's going to come towards you. It's not going to go anywhere else. That surface high in the central Atlantic is going to push them west, and then after they get through the Lesser Antilles, that's where it becomes a game of timing. Is it going to shoot back up towards the north like Franklin did, going into the Caribbean and then getting pulled towards the north, headed towards the Bahamas? Is it going to keep going and become a Caribbean runner and maybe make a run for Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Cuba? Does it even survive? That remains to be seen. But the reason I bring that up is because the general favorability of tracking off like this, and without El Nino, they have the opportunity to marinate and get a little bit more together. Because, yeah, last year we had Brett and Cindy pushing right through the Lesser Antilles, but they immediately were squashed and burned alive because we had our El Nino sinking air and our shear. there was a force field, more or less, like a meteorological force field just beyond the Lesser Antilles and the Greater Antilles. And if you remember, that makes a lot of sense because tropical storms Philippe, Rena, Tammy, well, Hurricane Tammy, all did this. They all did that, each and every single one of them. It's like they ran right into that Independence Day style force field and just dipped out. Franklin was very disorganized and once again just did a beeline straight up and out, almost like a hard 90-degree turn. That wouldn't necessarily be the case this year because we don't have El Nino. We have decent steering out over the Greater Atlantic, the North and Central Atlantic, so those things are going to have the ability to wander in. And then it becomes, like I said, whether they're going to shoot out and not be a threat to the U.S., but still dump some rainfall, bring some threats to the Caribbean islands, or make it in and try to do something. You know? We come over to the precipitable water control for the GFS. The GFS, guys, does some funny stuff. I'm just going to say that. And I don't know if I buy it. But it's definitely fun is what I'm going to use to describe it. So there goes Tropical Storm Alberto coming in. GFS kind of takes it a little bit closer towards southern Texas. Lots of really good precipitable water values up there, right around 2.5, 3 inches, so definitely a flood threat. There goes our other invest going right towards South Carolina on the GFS, but then check this out. So the GFS brings in that second system, kind of rakes it up the coastline, but then did you see what that other area does? Right there. This is getting a little spooky. This is getting a little spooky, okay? And the reason I say spooky is because for a long time, even since December, for my viewers out there who've been watching us for a while, I have mentioned 2024 has given me big-time 2004 vibes, okay? Hear me out. Just hear me out, okay? Hear me out. Please, rock with me. Just open up the mind. Don't go into, he's fibbing, he's getting excited. Just please hear me out. Invest 90. Heavy rains, flooding for South Florida. What did it do? It did this. Right? That other system out there in the Western Atlantic, Bahamas, some ensembles wanted to do this, right? Charlie, Francis. European model. Bring something up towards the panhandle. Ivan, anybody? Getting chills mentioning this. And then look at what the GFS does. See that thing off the Carolina coast? Goes up north, loop-de-loops around, and hits the east coast of Florida. Loop-de-loops around. Gene, anybody? Not rooted in science. Not rooted in research. Not rooted in anything official. But that's spooky. Charlie, Western Florida. Francis, after that, Eastern Florida. Ivan, after that, Panhandle. And now, all of a sudden, the control GFS, loop-de-loop, East Coast of Florida. I'm telling you, I'm getting goosebumps all over my body right now. I'm being honest. Again, big disclaimer, not putting a lot of faith that this is actually what's going to occur, not making it like, my official forecast that this is what we need to watch for, but I just find it very suspicious that we got this first. European ensembles, GFS ensembles, some of our models still definitely want to take this into East Florida. Now we have on the Euro, we go back to the European model, and you look at that, panhandle of Florida, and then on the control member of the GFS here, all of a sudden we want to get like a little loop-de-loop storm and crash it back into the East Coast of Florida. Just very, very spooky. Very spooky. And you know what? We could almost argue that we're maybe not there yet. We're maybe seeing signals of what later in the hurricane season could happen. Because if you look at 2004, we had weak system come through early on. We had a weak system come through very early. Didn't really do very much. Then we had Bonnie that came up towards the very similar track to Bonnie, too. As a matter of fact, let's look at Bonnie real quick. I just realized that. Might be a very small scale, small scale analog. Bonnie was a long tracker out there in August, but same general source region out there where it finally organized and did something over the southern Gulf of Mexico, and then came up, kind of like what the European model is thinking, up this way. So very interesting. Very interesting. And then if you watch up there, see this is the guy I'm looking at. That weird thing on the control member of the GFS circles back around and then comes through the state of Florida. Was that there at 0Z? Was that actually on the 0Z? Oh, the 0Z GFS is kind of more in line with the European model, taking that second system up towards Louisiana. It was kind of on 0Z. Kind of on the 0Z. 18 Zulu has that secondary system coming up. 18Z had a third system coming up. Has a lot of systems coming up at 18Z, but that's definitely happy hour. And then I brought up the UK model just to see what the UK is thinking. The UK model still has that thing out there in the Greater Atlantic coming towards Central Florida as a very elongated open wave. Has Tropical Storm, I was going to say Philippe, has Tropical Storm Alberto crashing into Mexico, and so on and so forth. So decent model agreement here. You can see on the UK model that our feature remains an open wave and moves across like so. So some of our models are still thinking that, there is a chance that that little thing out there could try to execute something. We come over to our easterly wave ensembles, and you look at the different ensemble runs. You can see, because this doesn't have that pressure bias. When I say pressure bias on weathermodels.com, it'll only stamp it after a certain point. It needs to be within a criteria. So you can't see all our ensembles. There's our number 1. There goes our number 2. There goes number 3 at 0Z, and then all that little stuff out there in the MDR and down here. You go to 060. 060 kind of upticked again. 060 kind of upticked again. So we'll still need to watch. We can't completely dismiss this just yet. I know we're in the short term. This is going to be like a 5-day ordeal before it comes and goes. But just looking at the windy streamlines and how our models are very quickly going back and forth. If you look, we go back to 0 Zulu yesterday. Pretty solid agreement. Then at 6Z yesterday, starts to wean itself off. 12 Zulu, we lose. Actually, 12Z kept a number of the ensemble members around, and then 18Z, we lose a lot of agreement. 18Z lost a lot of agreement. Then 0Z lost even more agreement, and now we're going back up. If you look, 0Z is going back. 6Z is going back up again. So, it's definitely not something we want to completely dismiss. It's not something that, is worth completely forgetting about. In fact, let me see if on here, even with that pressure bias, if we can see it on our cyclone locations for 6 Zulu. If we can, then that's very interesting. Yeah, a couple of them. A little bit more agreement. Again, very small signal, very low confidence signal right here. Nothing crazy, but the fact that it went from this at 0Z, nothing. 0Z, we had nothing, to a couple of additional members, hiking it back down towards the south again. This is a more realistic interpretation, in my opinion. So, if I had to put my money on it, truthfully, I really do think that we'll probably see it stay to the south a little bit more. Let's go over to Tropical Tidbits real quick. It's a little bit of an easier user face to use, a little bit easier of a chart to watch. We'll go to the North America AOI so we can get a big open view of it and really paint the picture clearly. We'll use our 6 Zulu GFS because it really doesn't matter. We're looking at our steering currents. And see, that's why I really don't think that this thing's going to go that far to the north. I could be wrong. The model does seem to want to progress that ridge out a little bit faster. It does kind of seem that way. There goes our trough that could potentially scoop up some energy down there in the Gulf of Mexico. Hey, yeah, actually, it looks like the 6Z model for the GFS does have that secondary system in the Gulf. So there goes Tropical Storm Alberto, and then there goes our second one right up towards the Panhandle, so very well in line with the European model. GFS, even though I know we're going out there a little bit into La La Land, it still is in fair bit of agreement with the European from yesterday. If you look, you go to right there, 12 Zulu on January or June 27th, and you switch back over to the euro. Yeah, pretty decent, run-to-run consistency or model-to-model consistency. This 18 Zulu, June 25th. We switch back to the GFS, a little on the slow side. Does seem to have that convective bias to it just a little bit, but, still same general thinking. Still same general thinking. GFS actually does kind of build that system back up and crash it into North Carolina. I noticed that. Nothing at 0Z. There goes that second system right there on the 0Z GFS. What does the icon show? Because the icon has definitely been more or less kind of favoring that weak system out there in the Atlantic. So yeah, it brings it in as an open wave to the east coast of Florida. And I believe the 0 Zulu icon did the same thing. Brings it in towards the east coast of Florida. Yeah, right there. Very, very small, microscopic east coast low pressure right there. So I believe the icon a little bit more over this, in my opinion. The icon just seems to make a little bit more sense once again, and that's not me trying to, wish that something happens to Florida. It just makes a lot of sense because if we come over to our European ensembles and you take a look, that's a really powerful ridge. That's a nice blocking ridge over the eastern half of the United States. This is a very, very easy textbook negative PNO with a deep amplified trough over western Conus and a nice blocking mid, almost sharp amplitude ridge over the east coast. And what that tells me is this is not going to move very fast. See, zonal flow or a low amplified jet stream or, just a weak jet stream flowing more west to east, that allows our systems, whether it be troughs, ridges, shortwave ridges, fronts, low pressures, etc., to move faster through the pattern. When you have a blocking pattern like this, for my Floridians out there, this is like congestion at 3 in the afternoon on I-4. You're not going anywhere. And the European ensembles at 0Z really keep that broad or that mid-amplitude ridge in place until after next weekend. Then we get our trough axes in there that kind of works its way under the pattern. And if you look at the heights here on the European ensembles, it does kind of have it moving more like this, towards Jacksonville still. So, we'll wait and see. We'll definitely wait and see. Oh, actually, you know what? I just realized. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted again. I just realized that since we have an invest area, there it is. Yeah, we actually have some hurricane models. These are not really to be trusted just yet, but we actually have our hurricane models. They're going to start spinning up. Especially once we get that recon mission in there, we'll finally be able to get a better look. Hurricane models are definitely thinking that system is going to go up and move into Mexico. Obviously, again, these are not going to be very pinpoint and accurate because we don't have any observation data to plug in, but you can see the general thinking is going to be East Mexico. Going to be eastern Mexico and very southernmost Texas. Looks like the HAFS B model brings some vorticity over Florida as well, so we'll see. We'll definitely have to wait and see. And Lorenzo Jefferson, to answer your question, I really do think so. I think it's the models having a struggle, having a problem with the size of the system. I really do. Because this thing is tiny. If I go back to the model runs where it actually does develop, let's go back to 18 Zulu yesterday. Just look at how tiny that little baby is. That's like a toddler of a tropical cyclone. It's even having a hard time stamping or drawing the isobars around it. That's how tiny it is, moving in like so. So that could be it as well. It could be the models just having a very hard time with the size of the system. What does the NAM show? Does the NAM actually develop it at all? Oh, this is an older run. Let's go back to 0Z on the NAM. Hey, yeah, look at that. The NAM actually has a very believable track. And again, big disclaimer, especially for One Nation and TRG, I am not using the NAM to forecast tropical cyclones. I just like to look at everything to get a better feel for where the differentiation is. I like to use every single model on my tool belt so I can get a thorough understanding of what's initializing and verifying in one direction or another, look for model biases, look for any kind of interpolation issues with the model. And this is the 32-kilometer NAM, little bit higher res, if I'm not mistaken, than the GFS. I think the GFS is between 30 and 50 nautical mile or kilometer resolution, and that's considered its high resolution. I'll have to double check. I'm in a numerical weather model forecasting class right now. But very interesting. If you look at that, the North American model actually does bring something in down there towards Florida, a little low pressure. And that actually is fairly believable in my opinion. And you can't really discount the NAM too much. In terms of individual tropical systems, yeah, you can. Don't really do that. The North American model is not all that great with these tropical barotropic systems, but what you can use the North American model for in this type of a situation is to look at your steering pattern. And if you look, the North American model does continue to have a nice dominating high pressure out there over the eastern half of the United States. If we switch over to our thermodynamics and look at our temp anomaly, yep, that's exactly what I was hoping to see. Still very hot up there in the northeast. So this makes sense. I'm not going to, fully jive with it and say, yep, the NAM is on track. But I'm just, once again, looking at puzzle pieces, and the NAM kind of makes sense. There you go. Look at that. Even the 12-kilometer NAM, even more higher res. 12-kilometer NAM builds a little weak system, kind of like a depression, maybe very low-end tropical storm, brings it right in towards the Space Coast. So we're not, general thinking here, guys, is we're not out of the woods yet. Let's put it that way. We're not out of the woods by any means. We still have a number of different areas to monitor and just take a look at. Let's have some real fun, and let's take a look at our HRRR and see what the HRRR does. Look at that. HRRR is really bringing some nice rain chances up there towards Texas. FV3 goes out 60 hours. Let's see if that captures anything. Yeah, look at that. The FV3 has a little system out there as well. And the only reason I'm looking at these higher res models is, again, just to kind of get the general thinking here, because it seems like our more broad scale models are just really struggling because of how small it is and how rapidly it could try to do something. So that's that. We'll come back over to windy just to give you a better idea. There's our one system there, already closed off in the mid-levels. In fact, actually, let's look at, before we wrap up the live stream, I got about 5 more minutes, current 850 millibar vorticity. Let's see what the vorticity looks like out there. That's not the right AOI. I don't want the Indian Ocean. I want the North Atlantic. Hey, yeah, there it is. So, little spot of vorticity right there, and then a large area of vorticity right here that's expected to kind of couple up. Very broad area, but we have them. So there's one, and then there's the other. So now we're kind of in a holding pattern. We're just going to monitor and wait and see. Confidence is extremely high. That tropical storm Alberto is coming for the Bay of Campeche, and I don't really think we're out of the woods just yet with that system out there in the southeast off the Atlantic coastline. And then we'll have to see what happens as we move forward through time, if our models tend to like the idea of another system spinning up in the Gulf of Mexico, or if they don't. Let me see what the 0Z models had down there in terms of our icon and the Canadian model. I haven't really been looking at those. So 0Z icon, you go all the way towards the back end of the loop. Yeah, so the 0Z icon has a second system, but takes it across the land there and does not develop it. The Canadian model at 0Z has our tropical storm Alberto, and then, yeah, has a second system right there. Actually deepens it down pretty substantially on that second run. Not too sure it'll be sand down here. This is still our hotspot. First one's coming in, and then second one is on a number of models. It's on all of our models. It's just the discrepancy of where it's going to go. So it's on all of our models. Models are still very finicky with that other system out there in the southern Atlantic. There goes Tropical Storm Alberto on the 0Z AI European model, and it actually does have a very weak secondary system that spins up on 0Z. And then if you look, the AI model also does have some of our waves becoming a bit more amplified as they move across the MDR right there. Another one coming in towards the Lesser Antilles. So as we get ready to roll into the end of June and early July, our rain chances are really going to go up out there for the Caribbean islands, especially the Lesser Antilles. So Number of different. I'm gonna have to take some notes today. I really do. I'm gonna have to take some notes while I'm working on other projects in the background over here, and just kind of really dial in what it is that I want to look at for individual systems. I know for those of you watching, this live stream may have been very all over the place, but that's because, like I said, I woke up, didn't really think anything of it, and then as I sat down to start setting up, I started to notice the breadcrumbs, and I'm thinking to myself, we might actually want to pay a little bit more attention and not discredit anything right out of the jump start. So I'm going to get my brain together and put some notes, pen to paper, and see what is actually going to be happening over the next 7 to 14 days. But there you go, Sharon. There's satellite image. We have our current features out there, number 2, and then I'm going to call this one number 1. National Hurricane Center pretty much on board with the development out of this one. It is already an invest area, 91L. And is expected to move towards southern Texas, eastern New Mexico, bringing lots of big rains and possible shoreline erosion, beach erosion, and rip currents. And then this is our second one right there. Second one is starting to show itself. If we switch over to the water vapor, what does the dry air look like out there right now? Give me my cursor back. Thank you. Let's go to the water vapor, mid-level water vapor. Not too much dry air out there. Not as much dry air as some of the models were thinking. I think the GFS has been very, very biased towards dry air out there for that other system. And that could possibly be why it's not drawing it up or why it's not spinning it up. Could very well be a model bias. If we go over to our 700-300 millibar, see all that dry air out there? That's a lot. That would definitely inhibit tropical development. But if you come over to our satellite, not nearly as much. Not nearly as much. And, perhaps with the way the trough is oriented right here, that could help to draw in a little bit more moisture and pump it on in there. So, I don't know. Definitely worth monitoring. We still have a couple of more runs before we get a better handle on this. So, this area here and then this giant area here. Those are our two primary suspects over the next 5 to 7 days, and then we'll continue to monitor trends with those secondary systems, whether we get anything in the MDR, but especially the Gulf of Mexico, whether it be something for Texas, Louisiana, or something towards the panhandle of Florida to continue our vibes of flipping 2004. Here's a current look at the wind shear, and the wind shear is actually, it's in a little pocket there. It's in that pocket of very light wind shear. If you look, definitely intense shear on the north side of it, but there's that pocket that the models have been doing fairly good on highlighting to where it weakens down, and if it rides right up in through there, it'll definitely have a chance to do something. Yeah, see that? So definitely a decent area that's going to open up, and we're going to evacuate the wind shear. So it'll be left to its own devices. It'll definitely be left to its own devices. I think the European model is also thinking the same thing. We're not going to have very much shear out there. Yeah, there it is. So definitely keeps the shear at bay for the most part. We go back to 0Z. Yeah, there goes that second system. You can see it actually pretty well on the wind shear chart here. There's that second one that the European model is picking up on. Nice little anticyclone supporting it. Diffluence would indicate low pressure down at the surface right there, making a run towards the panhandle of Florida. So European model is definitely picking up on something else coming out of there. Actually, we'll use this. I'm starting to really like this Akubo Wise, Akubo Wheeze. Right there, yeah. So definitely a little something in the pattern. Right there. Alrighty, folks, we're going to go ahead and cut the live stream. I have 30 minutes to get ready for work now and kind of blueprint my thoughts. We had another wonderful crowd in here this morning. Thank you very much for tuning in. Boynton Beach, I'm not too sure, Tommy, about the storm, but we will probably see some elevated rain chances out there on the east coast of Florida. Still, I want to give it another 24 to 36 hours. Because models were initially thinking that if anything does form, it'll be happening between Thursday and Friday. So I want to give this another 24 to 36 hours to fester, see what the National Hurricane Center does, if they decide to fly into it or not. That'll be a big determinant right there. See if we get an invest, get some hurricane data on it, the hurricane models, and then we'll be able to talk a little bit more and come to a determination. But we're still very split. Still very split. Real time, we have our low, we have our vorticity, and we have a very tight circulation real time. It's right there. So it's definitely there, and it's spinning. Nice little center of circulation at 850. What does it look like at 800? 800, it's still there. 700, it's still there. 500, it's still there. And we do have a surface low. So we might end up seeing an Invest 92. And I'm not too sure why the models are thinking this is going to just suddenly fall apart, because we have our low pressure there, but we'll see. Like I said, we'll wait and see what the officials say on it, and we'll track it from there. Then we have our area down here, very large gyre, anticyclone aloft. So definitely a couple areas to watch. How are you feeling about South Carolina impacts from anything tropical, or even just from a front over the next 7 days? We'll definitely, One Nation, we'll have to keep an eye on it. I guess that some of our models are really trying to force, but then again, models do very bad with blocking patterns. So we might, that's why I'm saying we're not out of the woods with whatever this whole area is out here. We're not out of the woods by far. Models are terrible with cutoff features and with blocking patterns. They have a natural tendency to want to move those features along, and maybe that's what we're seeing here is the models want to get this ridge and trough, that negative PNA, out much faster than what the real-time data is going to allude to. And that'll definitely make a very big difference. If we come over to the model lab, we can take a look at what the telekinetians are thinking on weathermodels.com. Let's go to the special charts. If it would hurry up so I don't run out of time. Teleconnections. Let's go to the PNA. We'll look at the EPS PNA, Pacific North American pattern. And yeah, see, so if you look at that, as we go towards 20th of June, this is right around Thursday, so it'll be close. We'll go to a neutral PNA, which means we'll just have zonal flow. And then we'll go right back into a negative PNA as we get towards the back end of June. So that tells me we're going to have another ridge built in out over the eastern half of the United States. So it'll definitely be one to watch. That means we'll also have that trough coming in from the west. So definitely a realistic trend that we could see a second low pressure in the Gulf of Mexico. Just looking at this teleconnection here. If we go over to the GFS, the PNA here, I'm pretty sure it'll say the same thing. Yeah, kind of more or less the same thing. GFS does have that bias, though, guys, if you look. GFS, a lot more biased on trying to kick our trough and ridge out of the pattern. This tries to bring a ridge back into the eastern or the western United States with a trough out here over the east, and then we go back into a very, very strong negative PNA. So this could be just natural GFS biasing right there that's dorking everything up. You see, the GEFS is far more in line with what the European model or the European ensembles are seeing. Let's go to our lower dynamics, our mean sea level pressure anomaly for 6Z. Yeah, see that? A big difference. Obviously, this GFS does not develop it, but a big difference. The GEFS hangs on to our negative PNA a little bit longer and keeps dominating high pressure up here in ridging, which would drive that bad boy down towards the southeast Georgia, Florida. So I'm betting that some of our deterministic models are struggling with our PNA and our blocking pattern over North America, and that's going to be the telltale indicator for not only this stuff, but even just after that within the next 7 to 10 days. Lots to watch in real time, lots to watch on the models, see if we make some more rapid adjustments. There's been a lot of rapid adjustments, so that's another reason why I don't want to call it or not call it, because we went from development, no development, no development, no development, no development. So the models are struggling. We don't have that consistency or that convergence we like to say on this channel. So still, we're not out of the woods. Not looking very threatening, not looking anything crazy, but we're not out of the woods. That's the key takeaway. There's still a lot of things to kind of keep an eye on and look around the maps every once in a while. But thank you all. And One Nation Weather, I hope that answers your question. So Carolinas are not out of the woods, but then again, it just seems like we're seeing a tendency to want to rush the pattern, and I don't really know if that's what's going to take place. 9 times out of 10, our blocking patterns will stay in place a lot longer than what the models will allude to. The models tend to want to rush it, so we'll see. But thank you all very much for tuning in today. It is 10:03. I got to jump off the live stream and start getting ready for work, get some protein in my system after another workout this morning. You guys are phenomenal. I do appreciate all the traffic we're getting for these tropical discussions. It's definitely been awesome. I love talking with everybody. Nothing concrete. Well, I mean, I'm lying. Actually, there are some concrete features out there. We do have that 70-70 chance, and we'll probably see the 7-day odds go up for AL 91 out there in the Gulf. Still not out of the woods for our southeast United States little wave or vorticity couplet, whatever we want to call it. April, actually, northern Florida really needs the rain. South Florida, no, we can leave South Florida alone. Northern Florida definitely needs the rain. Definitely needs the rain. So that's kind of why, low-key, I'm rooting for that little weak thing in the Atlantic to come towards us. Not to get excited about a storm, but just because it'll help to give us some much-needed rainfall for the northern half of the peninsula and the Panhandle. South Florida, this is going to be a northernly loaded storm, or a northern side loaded storm. So South Florida, you really won't get too much depending on where that thing wobbles around. We're waiting and seeing. And then we have one, possibly two additional areas to watch. The number one being down here that could go up like this or go out like this. Definitely very, very, very determined by what happens over North America. And then we'll have to wait and see if the MDR continues to signal to us that we might have some more robust waves coming towards the Lesser Antilles, our frontline individuals down there, our frontline team members. So we'll see. Definitely a little bit more to talk about than I had initially thought, which is a good thing. It definitely provides me with a little bit more information to communicate with you guys. So thank you all very much for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments or concerns or anything you want to just shoot the breeze about, feel free to drop me a comment in the comment section of this live stream. Reach out to me on any of my other privatized social media, my Instagram, my TikTok, or my X. I'm definitely more than welcome to start a conversation up on there. Or if you have any questions about some of the updates I post on other platforms, feel free to chime in. You guys are always an awesome audience. I love communicating with you guys, whether it be first thing on a Monday morning or late in the evening on a Friday night. It's always a pleasure. It's always a joy, and I love just talking weather and looking at everything and just getting everything out on the table for people to understand and people to recognize without scaring anybody. You know, if it were something to really worry about, I would tell you. Right now, despite the action that might be popping up on our charts, nothing really too concerning. Texas and Louisiana will need to watch the rain amounts and the rain chances and the flood risk, but outside of that, we're not looking at any hurricane action. We're not looking at anything very dangerous. We're not looking at anything that's going to be changing the way of life or the quality of life for areas like when we have had major hurricane landfalls and whatnot. When do you expect it'll start forming? The real judge, I'm assuming you're talking about in the southeast, off the southeast coast, the Atlantic coast of Florida, Georgia. We could see organization over the next 24 to 30 hours. It looked like when models did want to develop that feature, it was sometime late tonight into Tuesday. So we'll just have to continue to watch not only model trends, but also real time, since we do have a spin out there. The spin is present. It's out there. So we'll just have to continue to monitor real time, initialize what the models show, and we'll wait and see. We're very split. The Icon, the UK, the Korean, and the NAM models, believe it or not, and some of our high-res models that usually look for thunderstorm activity, they all develop something and push it towards Florida. The GFS is doing GFS stuff. The European models being very conservative, like it always is. But showing something in the Caribbean, in the Gulf of Mexico. So lots of moving pieces, lots of things to track. That's why as soon as I get off of this, I'm going to get myself ready for work and get my notebook and my laptop ready to rock. So I'm going to start consolidating all my thoughts and taking a look at everything on a step-by-step basis. So for the next live stream, we'll have a bit more of a constructive blueprint or a constructed blueprint to look at. And if anything comes up, if we get another invest, if that area out there in the Atlantic gets an invest, then we'll probably pop live again. If it gets an invest designation by tonight, we'll pop live. We'll do another evening live stream. I'm not afraid to work a little harder and get some more content out for you guys, because with an invest comes additional data, and it's only going to get better. So if we do get something with that other system in the Atlantic before the end of the day today, we'll pop live at around 8 p.m. We'll see. If not, if anything does come up between now and tomorrow, we'll pop live again tomorrow morning and discuss. And we'll just keep an eye out, guys. But I hope you have a wonderful start to your week. Again, for all my fathers out there, far and wide, I hope you had a wonderful Father's Day weekend. I know I did. It was a great time over the weekend. Very relaxing, but also fun at the same time. And yeah, lots to discuss. I hope you have a beautiful week wherever you reside. Texas, Louisiana, we're watching for your rain chances. If we have any viewers from out there in Mexico, we're definitely keeping a close eye for you. Caribbean friends, Bahama friends, the Central America areas, we're not forgetting about you guys. We're watching very closely. And then obviously the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic, we're keeping an eye on what's to come. I think June is going to keep us on our toes, and then July is looking very anomalous. Very anomalous, because some of the upper level models make it look like July is going to be dead, but we'll have to wait and see. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to drop me a line. I always make it a point to respond to everybody. Please consider hitting that subscribe button if you're brand spanking new to the channel. Lots of more content to come, lots to talk about. You don't want to miss an update. Turn the notification bell on, and hopefully YouTube will cooperate and get you those notifications in a timely manner. But regardless, guys, we'll see you again soon. You know the drill. This is Weather